Sustaining Creativity podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Nate Palmer. First and foremost, he's a dad, but he's also a coach, author, speaker, and host of the Low Carb Hustle podcast. Please enjoy Nate Palmer. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity podcast. Today I am here with Nate Palmer, dad extraordinaire. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mari. I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
Super fun. I'm really excited about chatting with you on creativity, and I know you do many other things and how creativity shows up in the rest of your life. But before we get to those questions, why don't you take a couple of minutes and let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
That's great, because I love talking about myself. It's like my third favorite hobby. So I'm a dad. I tell people I'm a family man with a business. I do a lot of stuff in the fitness and nutrition space. I help people actually prioritize their energy and drop weight in the process. It's kind of my big thing. I run a podcast called the Low Carb Hustle, and I've, been known to write a blog post here and there as well. So kind of runs the gamut, but it all kind of stems around fitness. It's something I've been obsessed with for a really long time. So I talk a lot about nutrition. I talk a lot about working out and different things that kind of meld into that space.
That's so great. And I follow you on all the social medias. So I have learned so much about fitness and nutrition from your posts and your reels and your game shows that you do. So thank you for doing all of that and sharing it with all of us.
It is literally my pleasure. And also, have you learned about 90s hip hop and different Pokemon? Because something 100%. I strive to educate on.
Yeah, the 90s hip hop is for sure a passion. So every time you throw those questions in, I have a little cheer when I'm watching it. Like, yes, I hope they get it.
So I went to this place nearby, like a big open air, like mall thing called Tempting Marketplace. And I was interviewing people, and the only people who were out there at like 1:00 on a Wednesday were all like Gen Z. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, what's the best 90s boy bands? They're like, oh, I don't know any of them. I'm like, what's your favorite part about Coolio's Gangster's Paradise? They're like, I don't know that song. And I was like, well, I have to go home now. This is horrible. You guys are the
I was going to say at 1:30 p.m., it was either going to be Gen Z or your boomers. Like, it could be one of those.
And boomers would not give me the time of day. They were there, but they're like, I'm not talking to you. I don't want $1.
Bummer. Well, they're lost.
Yeah,
they're
right.
Lost.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's dive into some creativity questions. And my first question is just, what does it mean to you to be creative?
So I think that like being unique and inventive and like, honestly, just having a good time for me is really where I can be the most creative. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes when I feel stuck or stagnant is when I'm not able to necessarily let that flow. But when I have a lot of energy, when I'm in a really good mood, then it's easy for me to like ask strangers weird questions, come up with unique and different ways of approaching fitness and nutrition topics for my podcast, put together a reel that's engaging and not just kind of like the standard hit. Well, here's what you need to know about doing abs, which right. I've done a lot of in my life. Uh-huh. So, that's like being able to actually like flex those muscles and showcase a unique take on kind of a standard issue topic for me is where the creativity really comes out.
I love it. And I love that you just said flex those muscles, because I see creativity as a muscle that we have to engage with and flex in our life. So I think it weaves itself beautifully into fitness and nutrition in that sense. Yeah.
I think that like most things in life that are skill based are all about reps, and so like like, I know you have this platform about where people are saying, oh, I'm not a creative person. And you're like, that's not true. That's not true. You just haven't been able to flex that. A lot of times people tell me like, oh, I'm not good at technology. I'm never good in the gym. I'm not an athlete, but none of those things are true. Those are just limiting beliefs that we have and we hold on to,
Yeah.
because the truth can sometimes be scarier. I read an Onion article, or I did not, it was just like an Onion headline. And it was like women, violin extraordinaire or violin savant dies without ever having picked up an instrument. And it was funnier than that. I'm butchering it, but basically the idea was that someone could be amazing at something, but they've never touched it or never gone down that path or allowed themselves to experience it. How do you know? So when people are like, I'm not creative, you're like, well, wouldn't it be equally accurate to say I get more creative the more I practice? Wouldn't those two things be equally truthful? And one of them serves you and one of them doesn't, probably.
Yeah, totally. I love that reminder that even though we have these limiting beliefs, when we can challenge them and find something equally true, that we could believe that just as much as that limiting belief that we were holding on to with a death grip.
Right. Because if you fight for your limiting beliefs, guess what? You get to keep them.
Yay! Exactly. I mean, when you were talking about when you feel motivated and have energy, it's easier to tap into creativity. Oh, yeah. So on those days or those times where your energy might be low or you're just not feeling creative, in big air quotes, how do you face those creative challenges?
For me, I have to get moving. I like, obviously as a trainer and a coach, like that's something that I really prioritize. But I used to like sit down and just kind of grit it out, and I would put together something that I wasn't necessarily like proud of, and I'd go back and I'd have to tweak it and stuff like that. Now what I do is I let myself off the hook. I'm like, all right, hey, you're not feeling it right now, no problem. Let's go do something else. Mm-hmm. So either I go do a breath work session, I take a walk, I get a workout in, and then all of a sudden, when I'm feeling a little bit better, get those endorphins rushing, suddenly I'm now more focused, more creative, more inventive. And I think a lot of times when you're not, or for me at least, when I'm not like focused in on like, I have to be creative, I have to write something funny right now, and I can take a step back and be like, all right, I'm just going to work out. I'm just going to do something that I can kind of put on autopilot.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, or like, like the shower thoughts, right? You're driving and you driving somewhere you've been to a million times, you don't even realize you're driving there. And all of a sudden, all these thoughts are coming to you where you feel like, oh, okay, I got to go do that. I got to write this down. I have this idea.
Yeah.
For me, that's the key, rather than trying to grit it out, is just go do something else, take a breath, come back to it.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. I'm so curious, working in the fitness industry, and like when people struggle with that motivation to work out and that's their piece, what are strategies that might be similar in, if you don't feel creative, you're going to go do something else. But if you struggle to step into exercising or working out, what are those strategies to kind of flex past it?
Okay, so I'm going to basically just step back on all the things I just said and don't like take a second, take a breath. I think a lot of times with fitness, it's an intimidating idea. We have limiting beliefs about it. But we need to go do the work. We need to go put the time and energy in. And a lot of times, like, we have an hour blocked off for this. We don't have an extra time. So we can't just put it on hold. Right. So at that point, I tell people, turn your brains off.
Oh.
Like, feet over brains. Like, walk yourself to the place. Drive your car to the gym, show up at the gym and be like, I hate it here, and scan your thing, and then walk to the treadmill and be like, I hate this too. And then do the thing. Let your feet do the work here. Don't let your brain, because I think we get so tied up in, oh, I could do this, but like we could also do this. And maybe I worked out really hard yesterday and probably I could just, and we start rationalizing and questioning everything. We just need to flip that switch off and be like, all right, I'm going to go I'm going to just take the walk. I'm going to get outside. Because I think that when you put yourself in a position like that, you're not going to show up at the gym and then drive back home.
Right.
You're not going to put on your running shoes and your shirt and your running shorts and all your things and step outside and be like, nope, you're already done with a lot of it. So let your feet do the work there. Turn your brain off. That's my advice to people when they're struggling with motivation there.
I love that. I mean, I think
the same could be said for creativity. Like, shut your brain off. You need to let that subconscious part of your brain marinate in creative ideas. Go do something else to allow those creative ideas to come forward later. And it sounds like, yeah, once you turn that brain off and engage with the activity you're working on or doing, walking, running, whatever, lifting weights, that there's some brain piece that will come back in at some point to those endorphins or that dopamine of like, I completed something, and that piece can shift that mindset and support more energy in that moment.
So I guess whether you need to go work out or need to be more creative, I guess the answer is go work out.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm into it.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah. Go outside, get active, do something.
Going outside, so great though, too. Getting in the sunlight a little bit, just walking, man, is so underrated as a for health, for your mindset, for putting yourself in a position where you can actually be more creative long term. Man, get out and walk. It's amazing. And it's free. It's $3. You don't like it, I'll give you your money back.
Perfect. I love that. Well, you strike me as someone who experiences a lot of creativity in their life. But when you think about maybe your early life experience, what's your earliest memory of being creative?
Ooh, that's a great question. Earliest memory. Well, there might be one that's earlier than this, but I remember in my freshman year of high school, I was in art class, and I was really enjoying art class. I was not really like an artist per se. And then I kept getting C's on all my projects and being like, well, this sucks. Guess I'm not supposed to be an artist. And now I don't do art anymore.
Oh,
so that's fun.
Great.
Yeah, cool. Isn't that supposed to be a gimme class? Aren't you supposed to get an A in art?
I mean, I guess it depends on what art. Like,
I don't know. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I wasn't goofing off. I got a C in art.
That's rough. That is rough. Not gonna lie.
Now that I'm thinking back, I have a lot of trauma around this.
Oh, well, maybe we can unpack that later.
I don't know if you get paid enough for that.
Oh, well, this is true. But within your life and being a parent and hosting a podcast, and you have so many different things that you do, it sounds like you get inspiration from a lot of different places and people, but who or what really inspires you in your life right now?
I'd probably be remiss not to talk about my 4-year-old daughter who loves art and loves coloring. We had this big thing that we put on the ground and colored in this Christmas drawing over the course of about 3 weeks, which was really fun. It was fun to get back to kind of my childhood, just laying on the ground with markers and teaching her to draw Stussies, which I think is very important to teach her that part of my culture.
Yeah.
But I also love comedy. I really get inspired by comedians. I think comedians are some of the smartest and best reflections of our culture. And they do such a great job of calling out the BS, right? And if you think about back to medieval times and stuff like that, the only person who could speak truth to kings was the jester, right?
Yes.
So he I feel like that's the kind of the role of the comedian right now is speak truth to culture and to be able to say what we want to say or what we don't necessarily have the words for. And they do it in a humorous way to reflect back kind of our own just craziness and just the inanity that we're currently living in. So I love watching stand up. I did a class to write out some stand up, and I performed it a couple times last year.
Oh, fun.
But I love bringing that into some of the podcasts and, having a couple of jokes that I go through. And I think that is just really fun for me and a great creative outlet.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think creativity, should be fun and be an outlet for experience or emotions or what we're feeling, whether it is through comedy or through art or through music, to have that emotional expression and be able to process our emotions in a way that for many people may feel a little less intimidating than going to therapy, but is, equally as important and supportive for emotional experience and expression. So Yeah.
Plus, I think that like, having that creative outlet allows like me in my profession, because like honestly, fitness can be really dry.
Yeah.
Talking about nutrition, talking about like carbohydrates and macronutrient ratios and like, the hip angle of a Romanian deadlift and all this stuff can get real tedious, especially since I've been talking about this for 13 years. I mean, I've said a lot of the same things over and over again. So to be able to inject some creativity and explain it in a different way, add a metaphor, add a joke here or there is so much more fun, So I try to bring that element to podcasting into writing and that sort of thing. So that way, like I wrote a book called The $1 Million Body Method. When people read it, I hope they can hear me saying it rather than just like being like, oh, another textbook about nutrition. Great.
Right. I think adding that creative twist to explaining an exercise or talking about nutrition, people invest because they can relate to it. Like it makes them relate it to something in their own life that they can then buy into to have a more full experience of what it is you're talking about or telling them to try, for sure. Yeah.
I feel like people we gravitate towards people who can tell stories rather than instruct, right?
Yes.
Like people who have like really great metaphors, like it just sounds so fluid and so easy when they're talking. But a lot of times we don't realize that like the amount of expertise, practice, and like experience that they've brought to the table to be able to have developed these great stories and metaphors over time that they're now just sharing with us kind of like off the cuff,
Right. Absolutely. Storytelling is an art.
Huge.
It is a huge art to be able to have that connection with your own experience and story and have other people find their own connection to it as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because that's how we pass down like history from like generation to generation. We didn't before we were writing stuff out, we would tell stories because people can remember stories a lot more than they can remember facts or data,
Yeah. And then you weave facts and data into the story and people remember it.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's like, I love kind of those random facts, and I don't know why my brain just holds on to like the most random of facts, but
I know it's putting you on the spot, but can you tell me a random fact right now?
Oh yeah. So giraffes have the same number of vertebrae in their neck as humans do.
That is extremely random and very surprising.
Right? I know. Yeah. So
well, thank you for educating me.
You're welcome. This is bizarre information.
Follow-up question. Do you think giraffes use or need chiropractors?
Ooh, I mean, it maybe if other animals. So I've seen like videos of horses receiving chiropractic care.
I have a client who's a horse chiropractor.
Yeah. I have a friend who does chiropractic on dogs. And so why wouldn't a giraffe or a larger animal? It might be a little more tricky or difficult to maneuver, but
feels like you could charge a premium then.
You for sure could.
Maybe we're onto something. Do you want to quit your job and start a giraffe chiropractic clinic with me?
Let me check my schedule.
Please get back to me.
I will get back to you.
Very
on that,
interested.
100%. Giraffe chiropractic. What would you call it?
Giraffe-practic, probably. I don't know.
Giraffe-practic. I mean,
no, I'm on the spot.
I know. This is the wonderful world of creativity and how it can spark random ideas.
I like spark random ideas rather than spiral down a debilitating rabbit hole of chaos, which is kind of where I was going.
Oh, okay. So. No, and I take a very positive twist to it. We're just
I appreciate that about you.
More creative ideas, and who knows where it will go. It's a creative adventure.
Every day.
I know. I was telling someone the other day that when I shifted looking at experiences in my life as adventures versus challenges or problems, I have way more fun.
I love that. I also like the idea of being curious rather than critical. Well, I'm curious about that. Or being fascinated rather than like judgmental.
Totally.
So like rather when like next time you're like, well, that sucks, be like, fascinating. I think it literally like it's the same thing as we're talking about. I'm not creative. I get more creative with every time. It's like this. It's the same truthiness
Yes.
It's just where do you want to put your effort and energy? Like, which do you want growth or do you want fixed mindset? You know?
Right. Absolutely. And effort and energy, I think in the beginning, it was a little more difficult to look at something as an adventure, but the more repetition, the more practice I had, the easier it is to now say, ooh, this is going to be an interesting adventure or a great story. Who knows? Let's find out.
That's the mindset I take with all of the trips I take my kids on. So like last summer we got a chance to go to Puerto Rico for a few weeks.
Nice.
And so with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, it was an adventure, we were renting a car and, I put my daughter in like a harness and used the seat belt and our car got broken into and all like, it was just like, there was like a lot of stuff that, was an adventure.
Yeah.
But I think that when you have that idea of like, hey, this is going to be a really funny story later, or like this is a great way to expose the kids to something that's a little bit, like not manicured, it's more raw and real. And I think that is now you put yourself in a position, like a mindset where you can actually experience those things without judgment or feeling like sad. And I was sad when the car got broken into. I did get really mad for a second, but now it's hilarious.
That makes sense. In the moment, sometimes we do have intense emotions, and after the fact, we can look at it differently, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounds like also in that experience, you had to get creative in kind of really everyday experiences, like how to strap a child into a car without maybe a car seat or, sorting that out.
How do you get a 1-year-old to stay put at the beach instead of trying to drown himself like you kept like wanting to do?
There you go. What strategy did you employ?
We put him in a little inner tube.
Oh,
so amazing. He couldn't really walk around, but he thought it was fun. So he would just keep like falling over.
That's awesome though. Like great creative problem solving.
We also try to get him to catch crabs. So there's all these like little like hermit crabs crawling around. So once we were like pointed him at that, he was like, that's my best friend now.
The attention diversion.
Yeah. Always.
On to something else. That's amazing. Well, I know you interact with many, many people in the things that you do and just in life in general. How would you encourage others who may not feel like they're creative to find creativity in their life?
I think having a medium is really important. So like I'm lucky to have two, like between writing and podcasting. I got two different outlets for that I could potentially use types of creativity. But I think that like, I think that they've said something like have 3 hobbies, one to keep you in shape, one to make you money, and one to keep you creative. And I think you can have that just be one hobby potentially, or like finding something that you like to do, whether it's recording a podcast or writing a blog about gardening. Yeah. Or, working on your watercolors, like having some sort of outlet, because we do all have that creative desire. And then maybe we don't know what ours is. So like why don't you try a couple different things, take a couple classes. There was this guy I met who I really admired. But we met on an adventure we were doing like up in like a ropes course. And I was like, do you do this sort of thing? He's like, no, but every other month. So 6 times a year, I make a point to go do something that I would never normally do. So he's like, last month or 2 months ago, we took a cooking class. And then like the month before that, we did some like dance classes. And so he was always kind of experimenting and putting himself outside of his comfort zone to try new things. I thought that was just genius because, at the end of like a decade, you have 60 new experiences you would have never had in your entire life. And who knows, maybe you're a phenomenal ballroom dancer, or maybe you would like take to the piano really naturally. So, but you don't know those things until you try them. So I really like, if you don't have that or you don't feel creative, I think encouraging someone to try a bunch of new things and get outside of their comfort zone is the key to developing that. Because even if you don't find the thing, right, you've still done a lot of things and had a lot of unique and new experiences, which is an adventure.
Totally. And I know you talk a lot about stepping outside comfort zones or getting to the edge of a comfort zone. What are strategies that you practice for yourself in like getting to the edge of your comfort zone?
So recently I've been doing like breath work, but I do it now outside in the cold because there's a lot of research around like cold adaptations and brown fat and it's called cold shock proteins, which are helpful for your health and your energy. But I also believe that doing something hard in the beginning of the day is a great way to start yourself off with a win, and then if you do something that just sucks ass first thing, then then your day is just going to be good for the rest of the time, because then you get a mean email or someone says something negative on social media or your boss calls you or whatever else. And you're like, yeah, all right, I guess. And you can just it just rolls off you, versus, if you're stuck in a reactionary mode, it's hard to have that perspective. So I've been doing trying to get really cold. Today was really cold. It was 32 here. And I know you're like, oh, it's 7 here in Denver.
No, you're fine.
But that's chilly. And I was very cold. And then I've been doing jujitsu recently, which is something that I have a lot of room for improvement in. I'm trying not to say I'm bad at it anymore. But I'm a physical person. I'm good at the gym. I'm really good at pulling things down and then lowering them slowly. Very top notch. Been doing it for a long time. Good at podcasting, good at writing, that sort of thing. So putting myself in a situation where I'm the lowest on the totem pole and have the most to learn out of anyone else has been challenging. It's been a big ego check for me. So I think again, putting yourself in situations where you have a lot to learn and doing things that are uncomfortable or difficult are both great ways of stepping outside of the comfort zone and also having fascinating adventures.
Totally. I can appreciate the jujitsu. I think of myself as a highly coordinated person, do a lot of dance, a lot of, exercise. And I did a boxing program, and that was one of the most challenging coordination experiences I've ever had.
I believe that. Boxing is no joke.
Yeah. But it was kind of that humbling experience of, wow, I thought I was going to be better than I am right now. So I can appreciate that.
The nice thing about that is that if you're starting from the bottom, and I think this about fitness as well, if no matter where you're starting from, the ascent is going to be glorious, right? So as long as you don't quit, and that's a big message that I love to tell people. Hey, you can't lose at this if you don't quit. And that's the mentality I'm taking into jiu-jitsu. It's yeah, I might not be great now, but give me 10 years and you can bet I'm going to be fantastic at it, or at least much better than I am currently. So, because I think that we take this, and I think magazines and stuff, speaking specifically to fitness, but probably also applies to creativity in general. But we take this 3-week detox, this 6 weeks to results, this 21-day cleanse mentality. And at the end of the 21 days, we're like, oh, what now? When in reality, this is a lifelong pursuit. And if you can just show up a little earlier, stay a little longer, work a little harder, and be more consistent than everyone else, you cannot lose at this, because it's you versus you. Creativity, fitness, the same thing. It's you versus you. So if you can just continue to show up and take those steps and do the work, you're going to be successful, period.
Yeah. Those are great reminders for, fitness and also for creativity, because you do have to keep showing up and flexing and practicing and trying new things and getting to the edge of your comfort zone if you want to improve or have more creativity in your life, which actually will help you live longer, which I think is pretty cool.
Is that a fun fact you're about to drop on us?
It is a fun fact that the more creative activities and you participate in, they've actually done studies that you live longer.
What do you have a number on that?
I don't have a number.
All right, next time.
I know. I'll find that number and add it to the show notes or something.
All right, perfect.
It's been such a treat to chat with you. I just have one last question.
I love questions.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
I would the first word that came to mind is euphoric. Maybe that's a bit much, but there's this certain vibe when I get going, and I feel when everything's right, I got the music on and I'm feeling good. I got my coffee, so my energy is high. Yeah. There's a certain point where I've had a bit too much coffee and I'm ha, and I just start saying things or writing that I would go back this is what was kind of happening. I was I'd have this coffee, I'd write out this blog post or do this podcast, and then I would smoke some weed later in the day, and then I would go back and listen to it and be holy shit.
What happened there?
Turn it down. But I feel once, when I was having such a good time writing and just kind of doing it for me rather than anyone else, it's a very happy feeling. I feel really good.
Yeah. Nice. I love love it. Oh my gosh. This has been such a fantastic conversation about creativity and motivation and energy and fitness. And I'm sure people are going to want to learn more about the things that you do. So where can they find you and how could they go about doing that?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, because we didn't get a chance to talk about carbohydrates at all today.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Normally my conversations are dominated by carbohydrates. So you can check me out if you like nutrition and fitness stuff. I run the Low Carb Hustle podcast. There you go, right there. I help people get leaner, live longer, and be legendary. So that's the main goal of the show. And then if you want to check out my book, any of your listeners can have it for free. You just go to getnatesbook.com and you can download either the Kindle version or the PDF, whatever you'd like. It's also available on Amazon and Audible. So if you're into that sort of thing as well, but those are good places to start. Find me on Instagram. I do a lot of weird reels.
They're not weird. They're amazing. They're awesome.
I do a lot of amazing reels, but that sounds a little worse when I say it like that. Then they are a little weird. And I'm happy about that because I don't want to be like everybody else.
They can be weird and amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm going to claim both. I'm going to find power in both of those things.
Good. You should own it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It's been a real treat to have this conversation.
Thanks, Mari.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.